afternoon, and welcome to Train Crossing Ahead, How to Navigate the Multiracial Districts. I come from the school of thought that if the train is not pulling out of the station at the exact time, then someone needs to be on that PA system telling us why. So that's right. We are going to get started. I'd like to introduce my panelists first. To my immediate left is Eugene Lee. Eugene is the Voting Rights Project Director at the Asian Pacific American Legal Center in Los Angeles, a member of the Asian America Center for Advancing Justice. Lee directs APAC's work on voter protection, Voting Rights Act compliance, and ballot access policy, and is currently working to strengthen the voice of AAPI communities during the 2001 redistricting process. Welcome, Eugene. And in the center, we have Nancy Ramirez. Nancy is the Western Regional Counsel for the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, MALDEF, the nation's leading Latino civil rights firm. Ms. Ramirez also served as a voting rights staff attorney with MALDEF from 1991 to 1997. From 2005 to 2007, Ramirez was executive director of the Los Angeles Center for Law and Justice, a nonprofit community law office. And we welcome her at this point to join this panel. The person on the end is Tanua Thrash. Tanua is redistricting consultant for the Greenlining Institute, a multi-ethnic public policy and advocacy organization working on behalf of low-income and minority communities. In her role at Greenlining, Tanua oversees the organization's statewide civic engagement and advocacy efforts and brings with her a wealth of experience and expertise in urban economic development, networking, and multi-ethnic coalition building. She was also responsible for all of those wonderful fellows outside registering all of you this morning. She's running that program also. So thank you and welcome to this really important topic. We touched on it a bit this morning in our plenary session, just talking about and looking at the different demographics throughout the state of California and how things are changing. And basically, trying to figure out how is it that we come together as communities of color to work together and to build multi-ethnic districts rather than really being placed against one another in a position of fighting rather than joining together to really see that we maximize our potential for elected candidates of choice. So we're going to start out and basically give each panelist a few minutes to just to speak to you, and then we'll dive right in with questions that will be directed towards each panelist and have them an opportunity to respond. So thank you and welcome. Oh, and I'm Danita Judge from Advancement Project. And Advancement Project is a national action tank that is a national civil rights action tank that collaborates with communities of color on interests that they care about. Yes, and we will start with Eugene.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending this session. Could I take 2 minutes to survey the audience and see? I thought it might be helpful to get a sense of what people are going to be doing for redistricting this year. I guess the question is who's planning on working with multiple communities of color, kind of along multi-ethnic organizing lines, and then who's kind of planning to work within single minority communities?
So first question.
So for first question, who's planning on working along multiracial lines? Okay. And then are there also folks here who are serving primarily one minority community? Folks. Okay. I just wanted to mention 4 things that I think are helpful to keep in mind, or at least. I guess let me backtrack to provide you the way I think about this. The first is that the perspective that my organization brings is one of a community perspective rather than looking at this from the perspective of potential candidates for office. There's a whole level of dialogue that occurs among candidates of color, particularly when they are actually drawing the lines rather than a commission. There's a lot of horse trading that can go on about who gets to keep their seat or who gets to run the risk of being voted out of office because of the way lines are drawn. And that's not the way we look at it. Instead, we look at it from a community's perspective. How do we ensure that Asian American Pacific Islander communities can be kept together at the same time while ensuring that other communities of color also are kept together as well. And so that's the perspective we bring. The second point is that part of this is about managing conflict and avoiding conflict between communities. And I kind of see that as the baseline of what we should try to achieve. So if nothing else, let's try to reach some sort of quote-unquote no-harm agreement where communities of color are advocating for districts that don't infringe upon the representation of other communities. But thirdly, I think there's opportunities here that we should try to strive for. So beyond that baseline of simply avoiding conflict, where are there actually opportunities for collaboration among communities? Where can we realize strength in greater numbers in terms of advocating with this new commission and getting fair representation for all of our communities? And then the last thing is, it's important to think about multiracial dialogue and trying to, present a united front to the commission. If the commission looks at various communities of color and sees that they don't seem to agree, they're going to have a hard time figuring out which proposals to give weight to, and they may not give proper weight to any of the community of color proposals. And so it's going to be to our mutual advantage to try to present a united front to the commission and show we've worked things out, even though our proposals may not be exactly the same. We've identified where there's possible areas of conflict, and we've worked that out, so you don't have to worry about that. So those are the 4 points I wanted to make.
I would just like to emphasize that what Eugene is saying is not just his perspective, but he's actually put those words into practice, and he's played a leadership role along with APALC, Asian Pacific American Legal Center, in bringing a lot of different groups together, including Greenlining, MALDEF, African American Redistricting Coalition, and others, to start a dialogue as soon as we could. The middle of last year for some of us, and then at the Thanksgiving, just before the Thanksgiving weekend for most of us, so that we can start trying to identify where there may be potential areas of conflict, and starting to talk about ways that we can collaborate in the redistricting process and work with all of our respective communities. Now, as a representative of MALDEF, we are advocating for Latino majority districts in the redistricting process. We have been involved in redistricting since 1991. We've been presenting maps formerly to the state legislature, and we plan to do so again in this upcoming redistricting cycle. That being said, we've also developed certain ground rules during the redistricting process that we've adhered to, I believe, fairly successfully in the last several redistricting cycles. And those ground rules are that we would not draw a district at the expense of another minority group. And also, our goals have been in the past, and they remain today, that we would like to present maps that are not opposed by the other minority groups. So that sort of is the framework that we have worked under. A couple other points I'd like to make about the upcoming redistricting cycle is that California will not be gaining any congressional seats. So it does make it a little bit more difficult, because in the past, in '91, we gained 7 congressional seats, and then in 2001, we gained 1. So when you're adding districts, it makes it a little bit easier in the redistricting process, because you have places to move and you've got some openness and flexibility. It's better to remain the same than to lose districts, because then you've got to cut somebody out of the equation. So in this cycle, we're going to be